all the groundwork really starts with a community or a consultant who's going to be getting all the information that application is required.
Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Folks, we're back for another show on Simply Trade Podcast, and we've got a good show today. But as we're talking through this, we're going to be kind of talking about a tool that's going to be used for economic development for a local community. So to our listeners, this is going to be a show that if you are interested in finding ways to potentially stimulate trade in your community, if you're looking at trying to an instrument that may be generating some jobs, some things of that nature to create some incentives for businesses to do business internationally and stimulate some international trade. Lalo, I think this is going to be a good show and whatnot, but we're all into, that's what Simply Trade is about talking about international trade, whether it's imports, exports, selling to companies, compliance, whatever, opening up new markets and whatnot. So I'm kind of excited about hearing today's show.
Yeah, I agree. And so I've known Joe Quinonez is who's going to be on our show here, but I've known him for several years. Being in El Paso, he's also a local El Pasoan, and we've sat on EDCs in the past together, a couple of them here in El Paso as well, and we've just, again, gotten to know each other, but I felt like it would be a good idea to have him on the show because we have in the past have had other folks come on the show and talk about foreign trade zones. So, we've talked about, with Jeremy or Liz Connell and even the new president, Shannon Fura. Yeah, Shannon, we've had her. I'm sorry, not president, but we'll talk about that. But anyway, she's now leading the NAFTZ chairman, yes. And so we've talked about companies participating in an FTZ. However, a lot of people, like, again, Joe and I, that are part of the community, that are maybe in manufacturing or in service providers, et cetera, may be part of like EDCs, that help the community bring in business, et cetera, that support the local government to help them win those contracts, the Amazon contracts, and or the Tesla contracts, that when they're looking for places to locate. But those groups are who should be taking advantage of, in this case, a foreign trade zone if it applies, to form a foreign trade zone. And I know Joe's going to talk about this a little better, but we've never talked about that role. We've never talked about
what a community can do. Right. Well, and again, as we're looking at that, it's like, okay, folks, if you're a member of a chamber of commerce of a small town or a region or whatever, this is going to be something you need to be looking at. Like, if you're, who knows? I mean, it could be Searcy, Arkansas. It could be Tupelo, Mississippi. It could be, Jackson, Tennessee, or it could be, wherever. It's in some of the small places around. This is a show that if you're looking at for economic development, oh my God, it'll dovetail into workforce development. It's going to dovetail into, again, stimulating trade so that your community may becoming a viable, community that's producing goods to be shipped abroad or bringing goods in and those kinds of things. So, well, Lalo, why don't you introduce our guest today, since you're a good friend?
Yes, sir. So on the show is Joe Quinonez, and I'll I'll try not to butcher this, but let's see how well I do. And Joe is definitely going to need to correct me. So I've known Joe. So Joe used to be an employee of the city of El Paso when he was heading up the FTZs here in El Paso locally. During that time, he was also the executive chairman for the NAFTZ back in the day. And now, and of course, there's a bunch of consulting and stuff that he's done in between. But now he's also helping the city of Socorro here in El Paso. Oh, not in El Paso. in the region, there's a local community or city called the City of Socorro, Texas, and he's helping them and trying to get them to also form an FTZ there, because obviously, like any other city in the United States, you grow too big, and there's like you're breaking at the seams, and in this case, El Paso has grown so much that now they're expanding into the outskirts of the communities, and Socorro, Texas being one of them. And so he's now facilitating or helping them be a facilitator as well for a foreign trade zone. So Joe, hopefully I didn't butcher that too much, but you go ahead and just say what you need to, and we can start with that. So.
In a world driven by innovation and global connectivity, there's one name that stands out above the rest: Schultz Trade Law. With over 30 years providing legal and consulting services to Fortune 500 companies, Schultz Trade Law knows the challenges that businesses face in navigating the complex landscape of international trade. The legal and regulatory hurdles can impede growth and drain resources. But fear not, because Schultz Trade Law has the solution. At Schultz Trade Law, they've harnessed their vast knowledge of real-world trade challenges and legal expertise to create a seamless experience for businesses engaged in international trade. Their team of legal experts know how to streamline import and export compliance, resolve trade disputes, and optimize global supply chain operations. Learn more at schultztradelaw.com, where legal expertise leads the way to global success.
Well, first of all, thank you, Lalo, and thank you, Andy, for having me on your show. I've been following it for some time now, and I know folks in the trade industries do hear about your show, and it's great to be on board, especially knowing you locally. I don't know, where do you want me to start? I could start with a little bit of history about me. I don't want to bore people too much because I think they're more interested in the subject. What can you share that they can learn?
No, that would be good. I mean, just so we can get a foundation as to why we're even talking about this topic. Because, I mean, if anybody, I mean, you definitely have that experience, Joe. You have that experience of forming and working and maintaining the foreign trade zones on the city or, you know, the government level, you know, so that should help put a foundation to this.
And thank you for that welcome. You know, I didn't start the Foreign Trade Zone program, but my role there with the City of El Paso was the Foreign Trade Zone manager. And so I was the specialist who oversaw, executed, and was the liaison with all federal agencies that had a role with the Foreign Trade Zone program. Locally, I got to give credit to someone who was kind of my, I would say, a person that who was very knowledgeable, and he passed away, you know, during this COVID pandemic. Bob Jacobs, he was my predecessor here, and so I got to give credit to him because he's the one that said, "Hey, Jose, I'm leaving. I need help." You know, I was in economic development, so I understood the marketing aspect of it, but how do you get it to a community to understand what the role of the Foreign Trade Zone program, how it can benefit a community, whether you're in a border community or inland, not in a border community. And it can work in any situation. You just have to know where and how to make it work. So, over the years, I was there 18 years, Foreign Trade Zone program, and I became a member of the National Association of Foreign Trade Zones. And that's where you really have a great resource of individuals and industry players that we bounce ideas from each other. We learn, we share, we cry. You know, we also pat each other on the back when there's some successful rounds that benefit all across the industry. Yeah. So what is a foreign trade zone? You know, people think, oh, you're bringing in something foreign, you know, you're doing something illegal. No. The Foreign Trade Zone program has been around since 1934. It was one of those post-Great Depression programs that the president of that time started out as a way to spur trade, as a way to engage and grow the economy of the country. And so it's been around since those times. And over the years, it's grown in bunches. I can't say that it's just been a steady, shot and strong arrow going north all the time. But I can tell you is that right now there's over $800 million of trade going through. If you think about the over 3,300 foreign trade zone businesses that there are in the country. There's, at this point, as of today, 301 grantees that are responsible for helping businesses in the U.S., and you have to be in the U.S. to take advantage of the program. It benefits U.S. industry. They have to be physically here in the U.S. It does not necessarily at all really benefit a foreign investor because they're not taking advantage of the program. And what it is it creates jobs. It creates investment in your community. Those are the two big sellers when I talk to folks about why is this important to my community. It creates jobs. It creates investment in your community. And the investment might be there already. Sometimes you have an international company and they realize they just happen to land a major contract and they need to export. And guess what? Some of the goods that they're bringing in, some of the maybe the sub-materials or sub-assembled goods that are bringing in are dutiable. And they are like, why do we have to pay duties coming in and going out? Well, they don't know sometimes because they don't get the best advice. And there are folks out in the industry there in trade that do this. That there's consultants, attorneys, law firms, specialists that understand the program and how it can benefit a business. And so our role is to really help industry businesses understand how to take advantage of the program. And one of the things I do first is, God, cut me off, Andy. I knew it.
Going through here. So from a standpoint here is that what I wanted to do is, again, coming back to some of the communities, is in looking at it is somebody may not really understand the import-export processes and all that. I get that. But what you need to look at is this is a tool that for those of us that are in the trade and those of us in that deal with international trade, if you will, in the companies would be able to utilize this. So let me take it from this perspective. You use the term grantee. So from a grantee perspective, that once you talk about this, like what does somebody want to do that, again, from a community perspective, let's just say that, okay, you're going to generate jobs. It's interesting. So it's going to take somebody some steps to investigate that. But let's talk about this. What would a community need to do to say, okay, we're going to have an FTZ and I got to become a grantee. So what's that mean?
Glad you asked, Andy. So you, as a community, what you have to understand is there is an agency, a federal agency. It's called the Foreign Trade Zones Board. They are the ones that work with local communities that are interested in creating a foreign trade zone. And so you may want to go at it alone as a community and say, hey, how federal agency, Foreign Trade Zones Board, we're interested in luring more industry and helping our industries here take advantage of the program so that we have more jobs, we have more investment. And the same day, you can talk about the benefits to the companies. We can talk about those in a few minutes. But as a community, the Foreign Trade Zones Board is the body that allows you to create a foreign trade zone. And there is a process. It starts with a foreign trade zone application in which you have to provide an explanation, a justification for why you need this in your community. You also have to identify your service area, like is your foreign trade zone service area going to be a municipality, or is it going to be a county, or is it going to be a couple of counties? And if it's going to be more than a county, it probably means you're going to need more support and cooperation from other local governments, be it the county government, and other city governments that may be in your community, your metro. And I'm talking just in general, Andy, because, there are communities where they're made up of a lot of small communities, small towns, 10,000, 50,000, and they're all part of a county. And they're connected with other counties because they're spread out, but they're connected because of the type of industries that they've developed over their time as creation. So it's a very interesting take that you tell me of that. I always try and tell folks that if you've never done this alone, you might want to talk to a consultant. There are a lot of consultants through that you can look out to. Where's a great place to start? The National Association of Foreign Trade Zones has a listing of consultants that can provide good consulting, and a lot of them will give you free advice from the get-go. So you don't have to worry about that. They'll tell you, look, okay, I can. If you want me to go through the application, we'll do this for you. It will take a community 10 months to designate a foreign trade zone from the moment that they file the application. Taking 10 months.
And that's if there's not any major hiccups. So it's, I've always looked at it could be, 10 to 18 months. I mean, it just depends on how extensive, what you're doing and whatnot. But generally, basically a year is what you're getting at, right?
In the, all the groundwork really starts with a community or a consultant who's going to be getting all the information that application is required to, putting the maps together, showing the boundaries of your service area, showing the interest from the chambers of commerce, the local EDCs, support from industry players that say this is good for our community, and probably a congressional letter wouldn't hurt as well too. And that's always something I would pitch is, get with your congressman, make sure you get a letter of support from your congressman, and you let them know, because that's a selling point for your congressman too.
Well, and again, coming back to the scenario there is that communities, when you're talking about economic development, people are trying to get businesses to come into an area, especially manufacturers and service providers and whatnot. And as you're looking at that, great. This is just another tool that would create an incentive for a business to come in and be able to do cost effectively, be able to, conduct some business there that, again, would generate the jobs. So there's a scenario. The thing that I'm hearing, I was going to say, the thing that I'm hearing is it is important that there is a community collaboration of, different entities. You've mentioned like local governments, county governments. You've mentioned chambers. You've mentioned, the private sector scenario there. So I see a lot of good things at the federal level, the state and federal levels and things of that nature. That kind of collaboration is phenomenal. But you're going to still need to have somebody that has the vision and take ownership of that to be that lead contact person, it sounds like, that if you're going to be successful to move this thing forward.
That's right. And usually the vision and the contact person, it starts with either a community or an EDC, either a local government or an EDC has to take this by the horns and say, this is going to be something that's going to drive and help lure more industries. When we're talking about...
And you're saying EDC from an Economic Development Commission or committee?
Yes. Economic Development Commission, right. Or a regional economic development organization. It's typical in most communities. We have one here in El Paso. Of course, this is a more mature community than other smaller communities. What you find what's really key is you have to identify who's going to be driving the horse, and that is typically a local government. So it'll be a city government that will be the grantee. In some cases, and I'll tell you because there are chambers of commerce are the regional entity that will be the applicant or the grantee. Okay, that's allowed as well. But you still have to collaborate with local governments. When you're talking about, marketing your region, you always have to collaborate. I mean, you touched on it, Andy, and it's a very selling point because as communities grow or they want to lure more industry into their communities, the foreign trade zone becomes an integral component of what do you have to offer industry to say, I want to go to your community.
See, that right there is, I guess, where I was going. You kind of beat me to the punch. Is that in looking at it is, if you are a 3PL or 4PL service provider, warehousing, distribution, and things of that nature, you can also be, an FTZ can allow for, let's say, some manufacturing. So you have components that come in from foreign sources. You're taking those components, and I'll just use this as just an example. Let's say that you're taking parts that are manufactured for a bicycle, and so you've got axles and chains and tires and spokes and seats and frames and all, and they could all come together from different sources, and they come into an FTZ, and then you're literally manufacturing and assembling that and create an actual bicycle, and then you're going to ship those back out. Well, it makes for a great situation where you don't have to clear those into the U.S. commerce. You go into the FTZ, able to manufacture your goods and then ship it, finished product back out. And it's just an easier process in that particular realm.
You nailed it nicely, Andy. I was going to talk about that, but you really put it out there really nicely. And I got to tell you is that, when you're talking manufacturing, you also, as a manufacturer in a foreign trade zone, derive the benefit of inverted tariffs. And what that means is that you're able to use the zone to obtain the lower duty rate that benefits you as a manufacturer in the U.S. more. And so if your foreign inputs have a higher duty rate, say 10, 12%, and your finished good is a lower duty rate, then you're going to take advantage of that and only apply the finished good rate. So there's a big savings there when you're manufacturing. And that's why it's such an...
And that's the good thing is, so folks, all right. So again, if you're not used to international trade in this, so let me recap that a little bit. Cause Joe, I'm dumb as a box of rocks. I got to keep it simple here. All right. So let me make sure I understood what you say, but let's just say that, a frame for a bicycle. Again, we're going to stick with that for right now. It's a good, people can identify with that. So, say a frame that is manufactured, I don't know, let's say in Italy or wherever, and it comes in, and the duty rate on that, let's just say, is 12%. Some high, and that's a high duty rate, whatever. But when you assemble a bicycle, the bicycle itself, a finished product, may only have a 3% duty rate. And so you have the finished products. And so let's say that of all the bicycles, let's say you manufacture 1,000 bicycles. And of those 1,000 bicycles, you got parts that come in and whatever. Now you are selling half of those bicycles to other countries around the world. Great. So they can be exported and all that. But the other half are going to be sold in the U.S. So now you're going to tender an entry for those bicycles into the U.S. at a lower duty rate than doing the frames and doing it all domestically. So that would wind up saving you a significant amount of money. Is that a good recap with that?
You did a nice recap there. You're really dropping some major dollars there. And so, yes, your finished good rate, in this case, the scenario that you gave would be 3% compared to an average of 12% in this scenario. It's some substantial savings, so why wouldn't a manufacturer? And as a matter of fact, I'm glad you used that example because there are some bicycle manufacturers in the U.S. here that have that particular situation where they import a lot of product components that are used in the manufacturing of the bicycle, and when they export it, there's no duties to pay. Great, but when they import it for their domestic dealers, then at that point you pay the lower duty rate. So it's definitely a savings and a win for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Well, as that is moving through the process, one of the other things that comes into play, I see it as, again, if you're a company that is interested in your community establishing an FTZ, one of the other key benefits that we haven't really touched on from a company perspective is cash flow management. So if you're a CFO, a comptroller, in our finance area of a company, and you are looking at selling goods internationally, and you're bringing in things in a bulk. I mean, here's another thing. You talked about the distribution scenario there. An FTZ is a good option for if you were bringing in, let's say, 10,000 widgets and you're going to sell 8,000 of those into the U.S. Great. The other 2,000 can go straight from the FTZ to the foreign, markets, and it's more cost effective. You don't have to clear everything into the commerce initially and then do a duty drawback, which the duty drawback it's appropriate. It's another tool in there. That's another angle on some things to look at. But from an FTZ, I will just say that, you can really help manage your cash flow better with the use of an FTZ, but you got to have an FTZ in your community to be able to utilize that. So that's, again, another one of those where if you're a company that's looking at or doing business internationally, and you might want to look at using an FTZ, then you're going to need to work, again, to get one established. So again, it's a community effort that comes into play there, I think is so paramount.
Right. And one of the things, it's very important that you really understand the benefits. I mean, you can look up the NAFTZ. They have a website that talks all about benefits, and they cover it pretty well. When I have a customer and they want to talk to me about benefits, I give them a kind of a real good overview in paper. We go through what is the duty deferral, what is duty elimination, what is duty inverted tariff relief. We talk about other benefits that are logistical benefits, such as direct delivery. Direct delivery is one that where you can have goods coming directly straight into your zone. And then you only have to file an admission, an entry once every 7 days. There are zones that have that specific benefit. There are zones from the logistics side that can save on entries. And I know my colleagues that are customs brokers don't like to hear this. Weekly entry, yes. The weekly entry, you make one entry for all the goods you export or for all the goods you finally decide to enter into the U.S. commerce, one consumption entry per week. That's a tremendous savings from a logistics side if you depend on an outside brokerage house to do your transactions. And we work with brokers of all types over the years. We don't try and discourage them to change brokers. We try and educate them. When I was the foreign trade zone manager, we offered FTZ training for brokers. And that was one thing, was to give them insight on how they could manage and improve their services with a U.S. foreign trade zone. So they looked at it, and I think that's what gained support there in El Paso, why it's such a big program and a big success. When I was there, we were able to get we had over 30 foreign trade zones active. I don't know how many there are now, but at that point, I think at our peak in 2012, 2013, we got foreign trade zone 68 was like number one in goods received and number two in goods exported in the country. So that says highly of how successful the program's been.
Well, you know what? You're hitting on something right there. There are a lot of communities that have created industrial parks as they're trying to solicit in, businesses to, to move into their communities and all that. Folks, you don't have to have something a foreign trade zone is not like some, specialized complex. It could be an industrial park, and you create that foreign trade zone area. And then, within that, again, there's certain things that have to be, adhered to from a security perspective, from, cargo security, freight and employees and all that. But all said and done, it's just another scenario where take what you already have in your community and be able to get this designation. You'll have to go through the application process, but it just enhances your community that much more as a strong pro-business situation.
Yeah, I agree, and that happens a lot here in El Paso, where you have an industrial park, like Joe said, and then within one of the facilities, they have it caged off, per se, and it says this is a foreign trade zone, only authorized, all these scary warning signs or whatever, but the rest of the facility is not, and that happens a lot here. And I know Joe's seen that before. So it's really cool that someone doesn't have to stress or say, no, now we need to build a whole facility, put it under a dome or something, and protect it. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So,
hey, Joe, can you talk a little bit about, I guess, we're going to need to wrap this up, but I mean, it's what's been the results of you've seen of a community that, when you were talking about going through it and they took the time to establish an FTZ and do so. What have you seen that, I guess, the results for the community itself?
Well, for the community itself is that as you have foreign trade zones created, the foreign trade zones are just part of a tool network that's available for economic development communities. And what it does, it really ingrains that community is going to grow. You see a community growing because the business is more secure in knowing that the foreign trade zone is a tool that they can take advantage of if they need it. It depends. There are companies that go through cycles, Andy, where they change products or they're mixing it up with new products. And so they even grow their program. Now they're saying, hey, we need another warehouse and we need to designate it a foreign trade zone. And so we see the growth. We see more opportunities in terms of jobs, and we see how as there's a more need for more foreign trade zones, people in that industry become more specialized. They become specialized in inventory control. There's managers that become specialized in foreign trade zones, supervision of zones. So they need to know what they are. But there's training out there. People like myself, like Global Training Institute, and other resources that are out there that are places that are there to help folks that need to be trained in a community. Don't let that be a discouragement, in a community. So the foreign trade zone is there to be a grower of your community if you want it to grow for you. You just need to look for the help. It's out there. In terms of investment, I see that you will see more investment because the community, the business feels that there's support from the community and they're willing to take a shot at growing. So before you know it, that manufacturer or that distributor is looking for more space to grow. And over the years, I've seen companies that come and go, but I've seen, for the most part, it's been very positive growth. When they started with a warehouse that was only 30,000 square feet, now they're occupying warehouse space of over 100,000 square feet. And these are companies that started maybe 5, 10, 20 years ago and have been major players here in El Paso. I've seen that in other parts of the country. But whether you're in Dallas or you're in Phoenix, you see the same effect happening. And in smaller communities, Las Cruces, Doña Ana, Santa Teresa is growing with the foreign trade zone program. And what they have going through there is real cool. iPads going north through a foreign trade zone. So definitely bringing jobs to New Mexico.
Well, I will say this has been a good discussion. It's one of those things, again, that folks, if you're interested in FTZ, we're going to have some good contact information for Joe, and then there's others. The NAFTZ is a website. Is it naftz.org? Isn't that the? Yep. And so, there's a resource there. And with all that, and Lala, as far as, again, the economic development type discussions and things that you and Joe both have participated in, any suggestions or things to offer people to take back to their own EDC committees in around the country?
No, nothing more other than don't be afraid to look at options like this. It's sometimes the city gets so focused with the cool stuff, like I said, the retail, this new movie theaters coming in, or, like they get focused on that really, really cool stuff that's coming in. But in the grand scheme of things, again, look at your manufacturing, look at or distribution centers, look at how many people those are going to employ versus, look at the Amazon distribution or fulfillment centers. Those guys employ people full shifts for 3 shifts a day. Those are very heavy employers, and same thing with manufacturing. And that's going to even be more prevalent now with the Christmas season coming, and so anyway, I just feel, compared to a really nice, Dave and Buster's that's coming in, nothing bad about Dave and Buster's. Who doesn't like a Dave and Buster's, right? But, compared to the number of people that they're going to employ to a manufacturer or a distribution center that could be on a foreign trade zone or whatnot, I just feel that those are the really neat things that someone should be focusing on. So,
and Lalo, to add to that, is typically in a manufacturing or distribution, from a salary perspective, the wages are higher than in the retail environment.
Definitely, yes.
Any last words from you, my friend?
Well, I'd just like to say, if somebody wants to follow up with you, one thing I do with my clients is I offer them a free feasibility analysis. That's just to help them understand it from a company's perspective. Is a foreign trade zone a good mix for them? If it isn't, I'll be honest with them and tell them, your numbers don't work out. Your import-export numbers don't work out. You're not going to benefit using the zone. But if they do, then this is where I get into the detail and explain to them how much they're going to save by using a foreign trade zone on a yearly basis. And they see the benefits like, what? We're going to save $800,000 a year? Why don't we have a foreign trade zone? And you know who's the first one to bark on that? The CFO.
Yes. Well, that's where I come back. Yes, you're right. It's like,
why are we
not only do you manage cash flow, but it lowers your operating costs.
Right.
So it's another key thing.
So yeah, that's a big thing. There's a lot of help out there. I'm more of a boutique consultant. So I try not to take on big projects. I work more on a personal relationship basis. I like to know the customer, follow up with them, know what their family's about, know their culture. And really, this is the way I help better, is understand what the company culture is, what the management culture is, so I can do a better job in knowing what their expectations are and how they want to work. That's how I bring resources to them quickly so that they can set up a zone in the best fit in a shorter time frame. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Lalo. I really would like to come back sometime. If you want to talk about economic development, that's my other area that I do as a consultant and with the city of Socorro. We can talk about, just business attraction, or small business support. Those are two different areas of economic development I don't hear about a lot, but they're very important to communities too. It's a different subject. But obviously, the Foreign Trade Zone program is dear to me because I've been around those circles for over 25 years now.
I get it. Well, it's like yeah. Thank you so much. It's been a good show. So, in with that, well, folks, I hope you have learned a lot. Lalo, again, the contact information will be out there. Any information or links, I guess you'll have posted.
Yes. We'll do that, and we'll make sure that Joe is referenced on there as well. So don't. But yes, that this was a good episode, and for sure, Joe, we'll have you back.
Yeah, definitely, folks. You have a great day, and share this, like it if you will. We appreciate your listenership and looking at. Make comments on LinkedIn if you would. Good, bad, or indifferent. We want to hear from you, so we appreciate y'all. So, with that, y'all have a good day.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. you should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.